way the Africans refer to God is the totality of creation itself. Okay? The totality of creation itself means everything that exists, including you, makes up what is God in the African mind. You are nothing more than an aspect of God having your peculiar experiences as a part of the greater whole. The consciousness of that relationship that makes you spiritually aware. You see, what the white man has done is dumb us down, and he's cast God in his image so that we see God only in the context of a white man's possibilities. That's not an African notion of God. You've got to tell it often enough. They didn't know what they know now until somebody told it over and over again. All religion is nothing but a path to understanding divinity. And divinity is nothing but a knowledge of cosmology and ecology and your relationship to it and this relationship to you. I mean, most human bodies break down to over 400 elements and minerals. Every one of those elements and minerals can be found in the rest of the cosmology and the rest of the ecology. So you have diamond in you, you have gold in you, okay? You have manganese in you, you have iron in you, you have tungsten in you. You don't think the iron in you talk to the iron in the ground? Or let the manganese in you talk to the manganese in me? The only reason we don't understand because we embedded in white people's ignorance, you know? So we don't know how to make relationships no more. Even when it happens, when you meet a woman, like when you met your wife, something attracted you to her. It wasn't just her looks. It wasn't just desire for sex. Something, because there was a bunch of other women around who you could have been attracted to. Something attracted you to her, and something attracted her to you. And that's what you've got to find. See, when you find that thing, that's when you find the God in you, and you find the God in her. See, it's the God in you that recognizes the God in your mate. And that's when you become one. Seek knowledge, and then teach the knowledge you have. But be willing to learn, and be willing to say, the one thing I know is how much I don't know. And then open yourself up to know more than you knew before. We need to just learn how we are. We are an old people. And it is likely that the civilization in the Nile Valley is not 5,000 years old. It may prove to be over 800,000 years old, with some new information that's come out about the age of the Sphinx. Well, if the Sphinx is 800,000 years old, just to get to the consciousness to build such a thing, you had to be around civilizing for a couple of 100,000 years. And so we're an extraordinary people who've been here for an extraordinary long time doing some extraordinary thing. Now we're getting our behinds whipped because we've forgotten who we are. And we're busy trying to be the thing that is kicking our behinds. Now, the way to defeat our enemy is to stop being our enemy. Kill the enemy within, and the enemy without dies. It's that easy. And that's why it's important to have the knowledge that we are trying to bring to one another, me to you and you to me, every day. So we can grow our families, grow our neighborhoods, grow our community, grow our nation, grow our race back to what it should be. Talk about the God, deity, and Kemet like they were white people having this conversation. They didn't talk about it that way. Language, Kemet, the language of Kemet is just like any other language in Africa. So what we're doing is kind of in error. We're calling these things gods. They did not. These are elements and forces of nature. Shu is the wind. Geb is the earth. Nut is the elements in the skies. They're not talking about gods. They're talking about integral aspect of the totality of divinity. And that each of these aspects has a function that makes up divinity. Divinity is every and all things at once, including you. And that's all they're saying. To understand this is to become wise. You know, not to understand this is to remain a slave. If you listen to my tapes, you gotta remember, I've been speaking for 50 years. Yes. I'm talking 50. I've been giving lectures and teaching for 50 years. So I'm not new at this. I've walked with Dr. Ben, Dr. Clarke, Dr. Carruthers, Dr. Hilliard. Before them, I walked with Kwame Ture and Rap Brown, the Secor brothers in the Black Panther Party. Before them, I walked with Adam Powell and Sunni Malik and Sonny Carson and Brother Willie Stocks. And so I've been out here like a long time, and I've been blessed by the ancestors and the gods that I'm still here. And if anything I got that's worth anything and that I can give to you, I'm giving. Don't mean I don't make mistakes. I got a lot of stuff wrong, but I think I also got a lot of stuff right. I will make mistakes because I'm human. I have emotional response like you. I get pissed off like you. I get it wrong like you sometimes. But the one thing I will not do, I will not stand down nor stand back. And so years ago, I made this statement, maybe 30 years ago, that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are mere fragments from the periphery of the African cultural and spiritual system. And so I'm still making that statement, that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are fragments from the periphery of the African spiritual and cultural system. And what I mean by fragments, these are religious formations. Religion, the word means to bind back. And so you have to ask the question, what is it they're trying to bind back to? They're trying to bind back to a body of information that our ancestors put together, learned from the universe on how to govern ourselves so we live together in a civilized social manner. Okay? That's what this is all about. And being able to control the economic, politics, and culture in the environment that we're in. And at the same time, being able to build for tomorrow, build for eternity, so our children and our grandchildren will have the opportunity to advance their lives, provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for themselves, live in a harmonious relationship with one another, and don't destroy the ecology and the environment that they were living in. That's what these religions and philosophies and stuff are supposed to be teaching the human being in terms of behavior. And so once we get that straight and understand what it is we're talking about and move away from the personality cults and move away from the worshiping of human beings as gods, and begin to understand that what we are trying to do is learn and implement principles in our daily lives, both in our personal lives, in our family life, in our extended family life, and our greater social and cultural lives. And once we get that clear, it's easy to look around and see what the fragments and pieces are. Once you've learned your history and you know how your whole body looks like, you'll know what a finger from your body looks like when you see it. You'll know what a foot from your body looks like when you see it. You'll know what a footprint from your body looks like when you see it. And so these other instruments of socialization that we call religion, a mere fragment, philosophical and ideological and spiritual fragments from the periphery of the African spiritual system. And so today I'm going to be looking at just more a survey. It's not that in-depth, a history of Christianity in Africa before the transatlantic slave trade, actually before the Catholic Church, all right, which people think is the mother of the churches, and before the Eastern Orthodox Church. Before any of these churches existed, what we are now calling Christianity in terms of form and belief existed in Africa for many, many, many thousands of years. So when we try to look at this thing called Christianity in ancient Africa, remember the term Christianity is a new term. It got applied around the 10th century A.D. Prior to that, nobody called this thing Christianity. Even at the 10th century, it was just beginning to get called that, and it didn't catch on until much later. But what they were talking about was African metaphorical teachings about ideas, principles, and concepts of how human beings should live and relate to the universe and relate to the rest of the ecology and environment that we live in. How we learn from the universe, how we learn from that ecology, and how we learn from that environment. And what we do to create a future for ourselves as we reproduce ourselves as our children. So let's go into the slide. Let me make sure I got this working right. And if I get to slide one, then I know we on. Okay, so we know we on. Now, I put this one up because I wanted to show all of these symbols of religions. Whenever you go around the world, you see the Baha'i, you see the Buddhist and the Buddhist posture, you see the Buddhist wheel, you see the cross for Christianity, you see what they call the fish for Christianity, which is really a symbol of a vagina, which was used in the ancient Tigris-Euphrates system long before Christianity. We see the symbol for Confucianism. We see the symbol for the Judaic system, the Shinto Japanese system. Again, we see the Star of David or the dog star out of Kemet for the Judaic system. We see the Hindu system, Islamic system, the Sikh system. Everybody's symbol for their system is there except the African symbol for their system. And I contend that the African symbol for what we are talking about, that we call our spiritual system and our religion, the African symbol is a man, a woman, and a child. A man, a woman, and a child, who we call in ancient Kemet Asar, Aset, and Haru, who the whites have misunderstood, misrepresented, miscopied, called Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And so that symbol of man and woman and child represent the continuity of life. You cannot have life unless you have two opposite sex that have an intercourse, and a sperm and an egg is passed, and you produce a replication of yourself, which is your eternity, because that is your future. And that must be constantly replicated in every generation in order for life to go on. And so that, as far as I can see, is the symbol that we projected to represent the greater part of how we understood reality. Now, if you look, now this is a writing system that's older than any other writing system in the world, except the ones down in ancient Sudan and in the Great Lakes area, out of which this one comes. And so look here, the cross. Thousands of years before Christianity, there's the cross, which they claim they use as a symbol because of Jesus' dying. So just this one photograph shows that whole concept is a fraud. So just to kind of get you started. So you can look with your eyes and see things, simple little things, that people sort of like think they can say it because we don't have any information. But once you get a little bit of information, you go like, oh, something's wrong with that picture. And then we come here, the pyramid text, the oldest written religious text in the world. At least the oldest written religious text known to the world, because they just entered the Great Mount in Sudan, the Great Temple Mount in Sudan, and they found a whole nother set of writing there that precedes and predates these writings, and I'm pretty sure that they were religious writing. But to us to date, the oldest known text is this one in the tomb of Eunice. But even here, it wasn't new. This was somebody repeating an older text. And so in this text, what the Europeans call the book of Genesis, much of the elements of what they call the book of Genesis is found in this text, okay? And in this text, you find God saying, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that I might exist. And then this God, who is called Amun, that which is unknown, then says, I hicker. And when he hicker means to vibrate. It means the same thing as the word. And I hicker and I produce others. So he produces Ptah. But look at Ptah now. No, first he produces Ra. Now Ra is symbolized by the sun. That means energy. And then he produced Ptah. Ptah is symbolized by a mountain. That means matter. So now I've produced matter and energy. And he came into being out of Nun, which is water. So now you got water, you got matter and energy. And in Nun, the Nun out of which this God arrives is black and in darkness. So now you got darkness, but with Ra, you now got light. So out of the darkness into the light. So just like David looked at it later and said, let there be light. He says, I hicker and I created these. And then he said, I cough up Shu and I spat out Tefnut. Shu means the air. Tefnut means the moisture. And then Shu and Tefnut, which is female and male, positive and negative, would produce twins. Those twins would be called the earth and the skies, or the heavens, Geb and Nut. And then Geb and Nut would then give birth to the first humans. Then we're talking about Asar, Aset, Set, and Nephthys, and on. So that Genesis story that they're using is our Genesis story. Okay? So that's what I mean when I say they are fragments from the periphery of our tradition. And then when God got through making everything, our God, meaning Amun, or whatever name we call him, Atum, whatever names are just descriptions of something, descriptions of characteristics of behavior. And then it says, having done all these things, having created all that my heart desired, I then expanded in it, which means everything that is also not only of me, but is me. So we are indeed, according to our tradition, God, the divine, having the human experience. Or more clearly put, we are expressions of aspects of the divine essence having the human experience. And this is what I was talking about. In the beginning, there's Nun, the primal waters, which one might even refer to as liquid matter. And then out of it will arise a tomb. And a tomb would be that unknowable factor that caused things to come into being. And then would arise a tomb Ra, meaning the light, the energy, the radiation. And out of it would give birth to Shu and Tefnut, air and moisture. And then the air and the moisture and the energy would then give birth to what we call the earth, all of the mineral resources that make up things, and Nut, the sky, meaning all of the elemental planets that's up there. And these will give birth to Nephthys, Osiris, Isis, and Set, who would then give birth to Ra, Hathor, Horus, Anubis, and so forth, meaning the human beings would come forth from the elements of the earth and the energies of the sky. So all of what we put forth in our creation story is what they would copy in their creation story. So when they talk about Adam, Adoma, they're talking about Geb. They're talking about the earth. And when they're talking about Eve, they're really talking about Nut. Adam means earth, ground, the minerals. And Eve means life, the energy force that come about as a result of the minerals in this earth.